Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And so, in the beginning, God created. Bereshit bara Elohim. So I've been speaking Hebrew lately. And so this verse, as it doesn't, God is not trying to prove his existence. He's just stating the fact. If you're in a room and, sometimes you're in a room, people ask you to introduce yourself. Usually you would say who you are and what you do or where you're from, something like that. My name is Kevin Akana. I'm from Kahalu'u, the pastor of Winter Baptist Church, or I'm a bus driver or whatever. So it's kind of like that. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. God was in the beginning, and he created the heaven and the earth. So that verse actually refutes a lot of things. It's funny as you study the book of Genesis, or I've been listening to other pastors, and when they first start, it was like most of their message would be like 15 minutes before they even got to the first verse. So I thought, I don't really want to do that. But there was, if you ever heard this guy, Chuck Missler, I think he used to be a nuclear physicist, very intellectual, and man, he goes on and on about all kind of stuff. But this first verse states the fact that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And who's going to argue with God? Because were you there? Can someone, he's the only one that was there in the beginning. In the beginning, God created. And so it's funny when you think about evolution, because evolution is supposed to be scientific. But really it doesn't follow science. Because there's the law of first cause, which states nothing comes. You can't have something coming from nothing. And they would say that there is a big bang. So I want to read to you about all the stars and see if I can find it. We're probably not going to get this far, but in a typical galaxy contains billions of individual stars. Our galaxy alone, the Milky Way, contains 200 billion stars. Our galaxy is shaped like a giant spiral, rotating in space with arms reaching out like a pinwheel. And our sun is one star on one arm of the pinwheel. It would take 250 million years for the pinwheel to make one full rotation. But this is only our galaxy. There are many other galaxies with many other shapes, including spirals, spherical clusters, and flat pancakes. The average distance between one galaxy and another is about 20 million trillion miles. Our closest galaxy is Andromeda galaxy, about 12 million trillion miles away. And a million trillion, that's far. For every patch of sky the size of the moon, if you could look very deep, you would see about 1 million galaxies. And like how the Bible says when God created, he made the stars also. That's it. He made the stars also. And when you think of all of these stars and everything, so it was just in a little speck that exploded. People really believe that? And whenever does order come from an explosion? When does order come from disorder? You don't see something explode and then it leaves behind something that's beautiful or a machine that works. You don't see an explosion in a print shop and there's a dictionary. You don't see an explosion in a junkyard and there's a car that works or an airplane. And then when they say that this explosion is what produced all these stars, you figured if it exploded, then everything would be turning the same way. Well, there's some stars going this way, some going this way, some going this way. They're all different. So you got to have a lot of faith to believe in evolution and the Big Bang. But if you went to public school, how many of us were taught that as fact? I was taught that it was factual. You know what? You have the evolution, which they don't know how it started, for one thing. They'll admit to that. We don't know how life came from non-life. And what's interesting is in order to have life, you have to have the DNA has to be present. And then you also have to have these amino acids present. But the DNA is going to dictate how it's arranged and how it's going to work. So you can't have one without the other. So it's not like it's going to go from one point to the next. You have to have this together at the same time. And it just goes against science altogether. So the law of first cause is a cosmological argument that nothing can't produce anything. There has to be a first cause. There has to be someone that creates it, a creator, and that's what it states here. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So there's also what they call the teleological argument. It is understanding that there must be a purposeful intelligence that created this world because the world shows both purpose and intelligence. So there has to be a creator. And sometimes they'd call it as, what is it called? Intelligent design. But evolution goes against that. There's also the laws of thermodynamics. The first law, energy cannot be created or destroyed. I mean, that's science. There's nothing else here there's no way we can create any more energy. It's only what God created initially. And then the second law of thermodynamics is things are going from order to disorder. But evolution would say it's going from disorder to order. It's going from simple to complex. But everything is really starting to break down. Like if you have a car, I remember when we bought our car, we bought one car. So I'm brand new. One brand new car. If you look at the car today, it does not look as good as it did when we first bought it. In fact, it has a salvage title. In fact, it's right now smashed, trying to get fixed. And we have to have someone fix it. It doesn't just fix itself. There's nothing we see that follows that. We don't observe anything improving like that. I mean, if you clean your room, like you could walk into my room, and a little while ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe about a year ago, it was clean. I cleaned my section. Everything was just, and it's not like that now. It went from order to disorder because of it's not my fault, it's just thermodynamics, you know. If you were to see my high school competition, Mr. Castle, hurts just doing that now. Order to disorder. You know, in this last couple week or I don't know how many days, when I heard that Ozzy Osbourne had died, in fact, Judith text me in the morning, "Hey, good morning, Ozzy Osbourne's dead." "Hey, hope you're having a good day. Ozzy Osbourne's dead." That is how it went. I mean, you didn't say good morning or anything. I got the text right here. No. That was it, man. I've been in a depression ever since. No. It's funny though. I listened to Ozzy Osbourne when I was a teenager, and I was heavy into the music. And so when you see all these videos, right? And of course it shows his. You ever see the one where it has the person who's real old or crippled up, and it says, my name is such and such. I'm this old, but I was once, and it goes back to when he was, young. I was once a child, and then it starts. It's really depressing videos, and it shows the person when they're younger, and you look at him, that he was a good-looking guy, healthy, and then he gets older, and then he got Parkinson's, and plus there's no telling what he, with all the drugs and stuff that he put into his body, and he was all crippled up. And then his last concert, he just did a concert. I didn't even know that he did a concert recently, but he had to sit down in the chair. In fact, they had to strap him down to the chair because I guess they didn't want him to fall over with his Parkinson's disease. And it was funny because I listened to parts of it just to see how his voice sounded, and it sounded fairly good. And so a friend had texted me, and I said, I was surprised at how good he sang. And he said, he was lip syncing. That's why. I was like, oh. But then I listened again, and so I don't know, maybe parts of it, but our bodies are going, just like, you remember when Whitney Houston went on she went on one of her final tours before she passed away, obviously, and she couldn't hit the high notes as she used to, and a lot of people were kind of booing her, or and the tour didn't go well. That's just how it is. Our bodies prove that law of thermodynamics, and yet people are going to say that evolution is true, where you have an organism that's mutating and improving, where there's nothing that we see that tells us that, because science has to be observable, testable, repeatable. That's when you come up with a hypothesis. Then you're going to have to go through those tests, and evolution doesn't have that. So it's strange that a lot of very educated people would supposedly believe in evolution. In fact, there's one of the greatest scientists, some would say the greatest scientist that ever lived, or of his day at least, but maybe that's ever lived, Sir Isaac Newton. And he believed in God as the creator. So his colleagues, they teased him. They were saying that's ridiculous. They didn't believe that. One day he invited them over to his house, and he built a model of the universe, with the earth and, and the different planets, the sun, the moon, and then also other, stars, and just a real detailed model of the universe. And so they came over, and they were very impressed. Like, wow, you made this? Nope, I didn't make it. Where'd you get it? I didn't get it from anywhere. How did it get here? It just evolved. No. That's what you guys are saying. And what you're saying is far more complex than this model that it evolved. That's just ridiculous, right? The Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God. The heavens declare. That's a loud shout that God created. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. So, the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, you have the first law of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, and you could go through all these different laws, and science does not back up evolution, but rather creation. So why is it people don't want to believe in creation? Because they don't. If they believed in in creation, that God created, then they would have to be submissive to God. But they want to just be their own God. So they don't believe it because of that. And I would respect someone for just saying that. say, you know what, I know evolution is not true, but I want to just kind of do my own thing. So I don't want to submit to God. So they oppress those thoughts. Look at Romans chapter 1. It says it goes down this same pattern in Romans 1. Verse 20. Romans 1:20 says, "For the invisible things of him," that's of the Lord, "from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." They might make excuses, but they don't have any legitimate excuses. Because when you see the creation, you know someone created it. Just like if something simple as this, you wouldn't even believe that this evolved. Like, we have a cross here. Well, how did it get there? You know, there is just a bunch of wood flying around, and it just landed here. And then you had wind with dust kind of chiseling it away. And then boom, now you have this cross. You wouldn't believe that. But you know that someone made this. Someone made this cross. If you see a piece of art or a picture or a statue, you know that the person that made that artwork existed before the artwork, right? That's why it says you're going to know that the eternal power in Godhead, that he's eternal, because he existed before the creation. He's eternal, and he's powerful. You're going to know that about God. You might not know enough to be saved, but you know there's a creator just by the creation. When you see a creation, you know there's a creator, and you can learn about him through the creation. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. They wanted to be their own God, and therefore, this is the result. And changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and the birds, four-footed beasts, and creeping things. God made us, and then you have man trying to return the favor and trying to make God. We call that an idol. Change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, to birds, four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. And we see that's what civilizations have done. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burn in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness and fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit Such things are worthy of death. Not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. And all that's because they did not worship the Lord. Instead, they worshiped the creature rather than the Creator. And back to Genesis. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So before time, space, or matter, God existed. He is not created. He is the creator. He declares it. The word bara is the word created, and it's exclusively for divine creation. Only God can create from nothing. They used to think that the universe was eternal, that it went on forever this way in the past. It was eternal, and it would continue to go on this way. The problem is, if you look at the creation and observe it, there's a lot of ways you could observe that this is not true. And one of the things is just, if you can just look at the moon. Well, the moon is, we're getting further and further away from the moon. So if we're getting further and further away, little by little, then that means at one point we were what? Closer. So if this, I mean, at some point, if you were to say it's eternal, that can't be true, because you would at some point be touching the moon, right? And there's a lot of things that, even the oceans, like the salt in the oceans, the level of saline that's in them, with all of the different things that create all like the magnesium and potassium and all the stuff that makes the water salty. If the earth was millions and millions of years old, not even eternal, but just millions and millions, I mean, how long would it have taken for it to be this salty? They'd say only a few thousand years. It couldn't have been millions and millions and millions and millions, or even eternal. So they know it's not eternal. It's just like an ice cube. When it starts to melt, at some point it was placed in that cup or whatever, or it was frozen, and then it starts to melt. It's not eternal. Nothing is like that. Even the moon dust. There's dust that's going on the moon, and there's so much real little bit per year, like real little tiny bit. But if the moon was millions of years old, when they landed on the moon, which I don't believe they did. Hey, that's just my opinion. And there's reasons why I believe that, but we won't get into that. But let's just say they did. Then there was going to be a lot of moon dust, but there was just a little bit. So, and there's a lot of those arguments, as far as the universe not being eternal, not even being millions and millions and millions of years old. So there was a beginning, and in the beginning, God was there. And he created the heavens and the earth. When it comes to us, when you first meet the Lord, that's our beginning. And when you look at the second verse, it says, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. This also describes a lost person, right? Until we say what? Till the light was turned on, till you became born again. Like we didn't even really understand. We didn't even really have life until we met the Lord. When you become born again, you understand that how did I even make it without the Lord? We didn't have any answers. We didn't have the answers to the most important questions. And now we have answers. Now we know him. We know why we are here. In fact, without God, you don't know how you began. You don't know origin, right? How did I originate? How did I get here? And then without God, you don't know why you're here, right? What is my purpose for being here? Why am I here? You don't know the answer to meaning. And without God, you have no meaning, because if you don't know your purpose, then your life doesn't have any meaning, because you don't know why you're here. And then also you don't know the answers of destiny. Where am I going from here? I mean, if you were lost, can you imagine those that are lost not even knowing? I mean, getting older, going to funerals, hearing about your friends passing away, knowing that's going to be you one day, and not being super scared about it. Like for us as believers, we know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I mean, there are people that I've seen in the hospital, in fact, Pastor Mark's father, for one, who seemed happy, excited, because he knew he didn't have much time left. And this guy, he thought he was going to Disneyland or something. He couldn't wait to be with Jesus, you know. But for the lost person without God, I mean, you're just going to be dead, and then not even understanding that you're going to be in hell without the Lord. And then also morality. Without God, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. It's just a matter of opinion and choice. Like an animal. I mean, animals, they're like animals. I mean, they eat other animals, you know. They have lots of girlfriends or boyfriends, I guess. There's, you know, if you see an animal and it has babies from everybody else, you don't think, oh, how's that? Wow, how's that guy? I mean, it's an animal. It's different, right? Morality. But for us, there is right and wrong that God puts within us. So no matter what culture you're a part of, murder is always going to be wrong. There's going to be some things that is just right or wrong that God has placed within us. And then, of course, he gives us his word. So you have origin, you have destiny, morality, purpose and meaning. All of that because of us knowing who God is. So without God, it's just like the creation. The earth was without form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And that's just like an individual person and the Holy Spirit convicting them until they become saved. And then let there be light, right? The light is turned on. And that's what happened in creation. Now, there are some people that believe, I don't believe this. I have friends that believe this theory called the gap theory. Anybody ever heard of that? Yeah. And a lot of people believe that, the gap theory. I'm not sure why, but I think a lot of it has to do with when theistic evolution and these other theories were popular and they could not refute it. Then they kind of like threw this in to maybe help balance out what these other theories stated. But the gap theory states that from Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, there was something that happened. God created everything. Everything was great. And then the devil came in and ruined everything, and the creation was ruined, and it was like verse 2. And so then now verse 3 was a recreation. Now, I don't believe that, but some people believe that, called the gap theory. So they'll say that Satan's fall and all the things that happened in between verse 1 and 2, because that's why verse 2 says it was without form. But I think verse 1 is just giving a summary of basically telling you what happened. And then it goes into the details, starting off with verse 2, that the earth was without form. And then this is what God did, is he put things together. So God brings order from chaos. The earth as formless and void. And that's our life before we met the Lord, right? Dark. And the Spirit of God hovers. And God creates. So that's verse 3 now. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. You know what's interesting is the sun and the moon has not even been created yet. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And you'll see in these first 3 days there is divisions, the light from the darkness. It's almost like these are all the stages, and then you have day 1, day 2, day 3, and then day 4 he fills the stage, with the stars, and then with the fish and the fowl, and then with the land animals and man. So that's kind of how creation goes, the 6 days. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And then you see how God talks about the days. Evening first, right? Evening and morning. Now, we kind of view things almost the opposite, like day and night. We wake up in the morning, it's day, or it's soon to be day, depends how early you get up. And the day starts your day, right? It's light. And then as you continue on your day, it gets later, and then the sun goes down. And then it's night, right? God doesn't look at it like that. To God, it's the evening first, and then the morning. In fact, the Jews today, to this day, they still go by that. Soon as they can see 3 stars in the sky, that is the new day, but it's the evening first. And that's, when the Sabbath is going to start, they see 3 stars, and the Sabbath begins, and that is the evening first. So the evening and the morning, because that's how it is with God. Without God, everything goes from day to night. Like you see Ozzy Osbourne, right? He has this great career singing all these great songs. Maybe some of them weren't so great. And then he gets to where he can hardly sing, right? And he can't even stand up. It's going from order to disorder in a sense. And then, the best parts of his life were in the past. And that's kind of how it is when you think about things without God. But with the Lord, it's always evening, morning. It's always night first, then day. And the longer you live your life, the closer you get to the Lord. You leave this body here, it goes to the grave, and you end up with the Lord. So that's an improvement. And if you've ever known someone who served the Lord, even though they got older, they might not physically be as strong, but mentally and spiritually, they draw closer to the Lord. And it's like their life improves. And I hope you could say that since I've been a Christian, my life has improved. But if you can imagine someone being addicted or being on drugs or struggling with all kind of issues, and then they get saved, there's still trials, but their life is now orderly. They're able to maintain their relationship with their spouse. They're able to understand how to raise their children. And we live in a cursed world, but it improves when you have the Lord. And then when you die, you go to heaven. And that's an improvement. But with the lost, everything, their best days are behind them because they die and go to hell. The best days that they lived was on this earth and at particular times. So it says that the evening and the morning were the first day, and God said that it was good. Verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. It's another division between the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now I want to read it again and see if you sense anything. Verse 3 again. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Did you notice anything? Did you notice anything different between day 1 and day 2? Okay, I'm going to read the third day, okay, and see if you could spot it. You get a prize if you spot it. So let's look at verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. He didn't call the second day good. You get the prize. Do you know that in the creation week, the word good is used 6 times? And then he says very good, but just when he says good, it's 6 times. And so the next time that the word good is used he says not good. It's not good that man should be alone. So he creates Eve from the rib of Adam, right? You heard my Adam and Eve joke? You heard that one already, yeah? Yeah, I won't bore you with it. Oh, but by the way, I still only got the same jokes. I didn't get any new ones. You forgot them? Oh. Okay. So God told Adam, said, Adam, what kind of wife do you want? And he said, I want a woman that's beautiful, like a supermodel. A woman that is like a gourmet cook. She can make all the food that I love, and she's just a great cook, and she's a great housekeeper. The house is just orderly and super neat, and a great mother to raise her children. I want a woman that's just hardworking, great personality, fun to be with, submissive and to me, and just a great wife. And God said, oh, Adam, that's gonna cost you a right arm. It's gonna cost your right arm for that. He goes, oh. Well, what can I get for a rib? And that's woman right there. That's why. It's just a joke, Levi. Don't look so serious, okay? It's just joking. God drives?
He drove Adam and Eve out of the garden.
No, I've heard it all, though.
So, yeah, that's a good one. I'll use that one. Now I got another joke to use for the next 20 years. But yes, exactly. It doesn't say good. Well, I was still making this point. So it's understood the fact that it was not good that Adam is alone, that Eve is the 7th good, that she's the completer. She completes him. So she's the 7th good. The number 7 is the number of completion. So she fulfills that. And of course, she is the helpmeet, right? You know, sometimes people think that when it says helper in the Bible, that she's supposed to be a helpmeet or helper, that she's subservient, kind of like, you know, if you're working construction, you have a helper, that person's like just there to help you. You're the main person and the helper. But that's not the word used for Eve. The word used for Eve as helper is the same word that God uses for himself, that he is the helper of Israel. And you wouldn't think that God is any less than Israel. So it's that important of a helper. And it's kind of almost like this, that God looked at Adam and, well, he didn't say it in pidgin, but if he did, he would have said it like this. Oh, brother needs some help. Brother needs some help. And so he got help that he needed. And when you think about it, you know, if you're married, a lot of times, a lot of husbands will admit that without their wife, they're pretty messed up. And it's a proven statistical fact that when in a marriage, if the husband passes away first, and of course, you know, there's going to be sadness because of the loss, but women can live their life a lot easier than if the wife dies first. Sometimes when the wife dies first, the husband is lost. Like he can't even wash his own clothes at this point, you know. I mean, not all men, but this is statistical fact that it's a lot harder for a man to be a widower than for a woman. I mean, no, I'm not sure that's not the case in every relationship, but it just goes to show you. Me being a husband, I can totally understand that. Because when my wife is not home, all I think is, I'm going to go visit her at her job. That's my day until she comes home. Because other than that, I don't even know what to do. I don't even think she'd let me wash clothes. See, I've learned from the beginning to mess it up. Then I never have to do it again, you know. We're actually smart. We can kind of get around things. What? You don't do that, Robert? I teach you how, man. Just let all the whites come out orange or pink, you know, and that's it. You'll never have to do it again. Huh? My mom taught me well, too. That's not the point. You're missing the point, Robert. My father also taught me well. Anyway, so I'll quit with this thought. The second day, now I'm not even saying that this is the reason, but it's a theory that this is when the angels were created and fell. Some people believe.
Second day?
Yeah. So I want to take, you heard that before? Oh. But it makes sense, right? Yeah.
That's why it wasn't good.
So he didn't say it was good, you know? Like, ugh.
Oh, yeah.
So something interesting happened. It's kind of late, man. Couple minutes. Look at Psalm 82. This is when this might have happened. This is still kind of theorizing some things, but makes sense. Psalm 82. Or also, I want to read this verse too. Turn to Psalm 82 and I'll read Job 38. Where was thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon the foundations thereof fastened, or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So that is, a lot of people believe, including myself, that that's a reference to the angels, the morning stars that sang together to creation. And all the sons of God shouted for joy. And when the Bible uses the term sons of God, when it talks about Adam as being the son of God, because God created him. And then also the angels, plural, God created the angels. So they're sons of God. Now, once we get saved, then we are sons of God because we are born into God's family through the new birth. But in Psalm 82, at some point in time, this happened. Maybe on day 2. Parts of it, they were created. Then the angels, when they were created, they were given a job. And we know that angels are ministering spirits, right? So when the humans came, they were supposed to help. And we know when you read Genesis, and we'll get to it, you know, as we progress in Genesis, that there were certain things that probably the angels taught them how to do, like work with metal, make metal, farm, how to plant, and all those things. There were things that they were supposed to minister and help the humans. But something happened. So look at Psalm 82. So God is having a meeting with them because at some point in time after mankind was created, see, the angels were already on the scene. God had a meeting with them. He said, okay, come on, angels, we got to talk because you guys are messing up. So it says in Psalm 82, verse 1, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. Now, why would it say gods when there's only one God? Because this word is a word that comes from spirit beings. So these are angels. Now, some people will say, well, that's just a reference to kings or those in authority. I don't believe that. The context is totally different from that. And he says this, how long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? So at some point they were created, and then they were to help. They were to help the humans, and something happened along the way. We pick up with this, with the in Genesis 6, which that's what I believe happened. But it could be that the humans wanted to rule over the angels, or they were tired of being subjected to the angels, and a human can't defeat an angel. I mean, in Hezekiah's day, how many humans did the angel wipe out? 180,000? So if you have all these angels and you have these humans, but you know how people are with the pride that they have. So they thought, you know what, let's defeat the angels. Like I said, this is just theory. This is, it's going to sound kind of strange, but. So they may have said something like this. Let's get the angels to do something that God hates. Because if they do that, then God will destroy them. That may or may not have happened. I mean, we know some strange things happen in Genesis chapter 6. But it says, he judgeth among the gods. He says this, how long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked, taking bribes? He says, defend the poor and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. God is telling them, you're supposed to help people. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. He said in verse 6, I have said, ye are gods, ye are spirit beings, and all of you are children of the Most High. See, God is a spirit being, but he's Most High. These are angels. But he says, ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Could that be Lucifer? We know he fell. Isaiah 14 talks about his fall. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. So we know this is speaking about judgment. And this is reading between the lines. This will set us up into the future, and which there's different takes on certain things. But what I believe could have happened is you have these angels doing things that caused God to destroy them in the flood, along with the humans too. And it could be that there were intermixing. Now, I know that's real strange because you're thinking, how can an angel mix with a human? All I know is that people can tinker with DNA today. That's why the whole COVID thing was about, or even before COVID, they were trying to mess with the DNA to where we wouldn't be subjected to disease. They're trying to do that they've been trying to do that for years. And with the COVID shot, that was the idea. I don't think it worked too well because a lot of people got COVID even after they got the vaccine. But they were still messing with DNA. if humans can do it in that small scale, I mean, how much more can demons do it? Or Lucifer tinker with it? And a lot of the Bible has to do with the battle between the seed. Because God says in Genesis 3:15 that the seed of the woman is going to crush the head of the seed of the serpent. So the seed of the serpent, it means that serpent has seed. There's going to be seed. And in Noah's day, we see that he was perfect and upright in his generations, and that means genetics. So he was still pure, and there was a lot of impurities. But anyway, it just seems like what this is saying here, it could be that they were doing some things that were very wicked. Like, I mean, children, do we have any children? Like eating human flesh, drinking human blood. Now, Jesus said this. He said, as in the days of Noah, they were what? Eating, drinking, marrying, right? So if it's talking about that, because I've always thought before that what Jesus is talking about, they were just apathetic. They're living life as if they had lots of time. They're eating, like eating food, drinking, partying, whatever, marrying as if they have lots of years, but they didn't have lots of years. But now when you think about it, I don't know why Jesus would have said it like that. If I was to say to you, do we live in a wicked day? And you say, yes, we do. Why is it wicked? Would you say, well, because people are getting married, they're eating, they're drinking, they're living life as if they have so much time? No, you'd say abortion. You would say same-sex marriage. You would say immorality. You'd bring up all the violence. I think that's what Jesus was doing. In the days of Noah, there were some crazy things going on. And he's saying what's happened in the days of Noah is going to happen in the future. And if you read Revelation, you could see this. You can see these angels being released from the bottomless pit. You could see a lot of this going on. But the interesting thing is that the Canaanite religion continued on even after Genesis 6. And in the Canaanite religion, what did they do? They sacrificed children. They did horrible things. And another thing is in Genesis chapter 9, you have the commandment to not eat blood, not drink blood. God never said that before. But then he says it at that time because that's probably what was happening. And the blood is sacred. And so I'm not sure if that's what it's talking about, but we know that God warned them in this passage. He warned them that this is what you're supposed to do, and you need to do the right thing. And because they didn't do the right thing, the day that they were created ends up being a day where God doesn't say, that wasn't very good. Because these angels, man, in fact, a demon, we a lot of times will think a demon is a fallen angel. And I mean, that's true, I mean, as far as sinning. But a demon is a spirit with no body. It's a disembodied spirit. The angels had their own body, but the demons don't. And that's why they possess. And so we see it in Jesus' day that the demons possessed. In fact, they could even possess animals when they asked to go into the pigs. And it seems as if a demon can possess anything, but it can only do what that thing does. So it doesn't want to possess a rock because it's kind of boring. Like, I'm just a rock. But a person, it has a lot more it can do, right? An animal, I'd rather be an animal than in a rock, and some people have said this. The first time I heard it was from Robert, and I thought, I don't know about that. He said, do you think these demons are going to possess computers like AI? And I thought, that's kind of a scary thought. And you know what? The more I look into it, probably. So they were destroyed. He says, you're going to die like men. They're spirit beings, so their spirit doesn't die. And even when we die, our spirit doesn't die, but the body dies. And so they lost their bodies. So they're disembodied spirits. And that, of course, happened in Genesis 6. Ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. So is that why that day is not called good? Maybe, maybe not. All right, well, we'll have to end there. And we'll pick it up, hopefully, as we get through the days of creation. Now, remember, Genesis chapter 2. Some people even think Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is kind of contradictions. But Genesis 1 goes in the chronological order of the days that God created. And in Genesis 2, there's added details. And really in the book of Genesis, chapter 1 through 11, those are very important foundational chapters. And more time lapses from Genesis 1 through 11 than from 12 to the rest of the Bible. So there's a lot of years there. And Genesis 1 through 11, we'll go over that, like what each chapter is about. But from chapter 12, it's easy to say. That's when God calls Abraham, and it's about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. That's the rest of Genesis, basically, is about their life. All right, well, we'll end there. And we can understand that just like the creation, God created, it was without form and void. It was dark until the light was turned on. And that's how it is when you get saved. Without the Lord, our life is dark, void. There's a void right within us. And that void has to be filled by the Lord. Let's pray. With heads bowed and eyes closed.